The divorce between peasant and government exists in South Vietnam, in Laos, and in Thailand. Father William Bolan, a Catholic missionary with more than 5 years in his area, described the lot of the Thailanders to my colleague James Robinson.
Father, what are the differences or the areas of conflicts between the peasantry here and the government?
Well, in many things. For example, the Thai people, because of the widespread use of the radio, know for a fact that the United States is sending in a lot of aid in the form of money, in the form of personnel help, and in the form of machinery to help Thailand grow economically. The people in my area, in the northeast section of Thailand, which is bordered by the Mekong River, never see any effects of this aid. Although they know that aid is coming to Thailand in the form of millions and millions of dollars, they never see any of it. Besides not receiving any help from the government, they seem to have the feeling, and I think it's true, that the government is somewhat oppressing them. If they go out to the forest and make charcoal or find charcoal, they have to pay a tax on that. They go out to these forests, the rainforest, to cut lumber for their house. They have to pay a tax, a rather expensive tax, on the lumber they themselves cut and saw and plane to build their own homes. Another thing, why they're very much dissatisfied with the government, because the only image of authority that they see would be the local policeman who comes through, or the local county head. These gentlemen come through, they travel from one village to another, and they live off of the people. By that I mean, they might come into a small village, for example, and they'll look the village over, find the nicest house in the village, and move in. If they want something to eat, they tell this man to take one of his chickens and prepare it, to bring him some nice fresh rice, and he'll eat it. If he wants whiskey, he demands whiskey. When he leaves, he doesn't pay a dime.
Well, Father, the communist infiltrators here, are they making the same mistakes as we are in this area?
To a certain extent, they are. But the communists do not make the mistake that we make of neglecting the people who live in the outer villages. They, one way or another, manage to get local indigenous people, Thai people or Vietnamese people or Chinese people, who know the habits of the people, who speak the language fluently. These are the men they choose for, what we might say, agents to come in and do propaganda work, to break down the government, to break down the people's respect for the government, to plant a feeling of dissatisfaction.
What is true about Thailand is more urgently true about South Vietnam. The government there is headed by President Ngo Dinh Diem, and he's patriotic, courageous, and devoted. In 1954, South Vietnam seemed certain to fall to the communists. Diem took control of the army, broke the religious sects that lived on the vice of Saigon, settled 1 million refugees from the north, and with $2 billion of American help, saved the country. Unfortunately, Diem's government is a happy hunting ground for his relatives. When the communists stepped up guerrilla warfare in 1959, he and his relatives were entirely unable to meet it. On my first Sunday in Saigon, at the unveiling of a monument, the speaker was Madame New. Madame New is the wife of Diem's brother, who is his chief advisor. She complained about American demands for reform of the government and said it was the United States that had not realized that the peasant must be protected. A few weeks earlier, 2 South Vietnamese Air Force pilots had bombed Diem's palace. It was the second attempted coup against Diem in 2 years. The first was by the Army, and Diem overcame it with American support and by making promises. You invariably hear that nobody could replace Diem, but his relatives, especially the News, must be pushed out. However, they appear to be inseparable. They are a close-knit family, as this family observance of the birthday of Diem's mother indicates. They are, by the way, Catholics in a country 90% Buddhist, and Diem's adult life has alternated between public service and meditation in Catholic monasteries in the West. So long as the government is a Diem family preserve, many competent people refuse to join it. It is a personal government, authoritarian, withdrawn, repressive, uninspiring, and uninspired. This is how the French presence in Vietnam ended in the 50s, in the grave of those who died trying to maintain it. The French were beaten by the peasants who the communists substantially organized and led. The problem for the United States is to bring the peasants in Diem together, but without the United States dominating. Otherwise, in the popular mind, we may replace the French.
The enigma of this war is the enemy. Except for the occasional prisoner, he is nearly impossible to find and isolate. His strength grows despite massive American aid and endless claims of government victories. Enormous military offensives through Viet Cong brush and jungle strongholds turn up few guerrillas. But caches are found of supplies, literature, and other paraphernalia of guerrilla warfare, like the insidious barbed spikes. Purposely rusted, the 6-inch razor-sharp devices, when buried in a rice paddy, will go through almost any shoe. You don't see the Viet Cong until they strike. They live and operate among the peasants. Most of them are peasants. Where they are especially strong, they set up their own local government, collect taxes, and form their own local army. The leaders are hardcore communists who travel the trails from North Vietnam down through Laos and Cambodia. They are effective professionals who have been doing their job since 1945. The cadres don't preach communism. As a matter of fact, mention of communism is nearly taboo. The line is, fight President Diem's persecution, rid the country of the American imperialists, stop the oppression of Yankee helicopters and planes. The Viet Cong prisoner invariably pleads innocent. He swears he is just a farmer, an ordinary man loyal to the government. There is a chance, of course, he may be just that. But it's too big a chance to take, and suspects are not released. The communist recruiting program outpaces their punishing battle losses. They attract by harping on government weaknesses, and there are plenty. But the strength of the enemy lies not in his numbers, but in his ability to gather and keep support of the peasant. Should he lose that support, should someone take it away from him, he would quickly lose the war.
James Robinson reporting on the Viet Cong. How deeply is the United States involved in Southeast Asia? We'll look into that after this message. In Laos, United States policy is today on the verge of collapse. The Eisenhower administration tried to make Laos an anti-communist country. However, our side, the royal government, was not strong enough to overcome the communists. The communists, Pathet Lao, are helped by Russia and China, and by perhaps 10,000 North Vietnamese, who are the most experienced soldiers in Southeast Asia. With our side losing militarily, the Kennedy administration, with Britain, Russia, and India, patched up a ceasefire and an agreement to establish a coalition government under the same neutralist prime minister the Eisenhower administration had thrown out. Now, this coalition, the royal government refuses to join. It says that it would be swallowed up, so it might as well go on fighting, and the United States, as an anti-communist country, should help it. We find ourselves pressing the royal government to enter a coalition with the communists while we go on training the Royal Armed Forces to fight the communists.
Now, this is the picture.
Sergeant First Class William Whitehead of Elizabeth City, North Carolina, teaches the use of the 3.5 rocket launcher at what used to be the French military camp of Chanaimo, a few hours from Vientiane. His students are Lao non-commissioned officers, and they sometimes claim to have understood when they haven't, because to do otherwise might seem insulting. But they are good students and learn fast.
One volunteer.
In Laos, the United States military advisors are spread around the country in teams of 6 or 8 or 10, often in pockets surrounded by the communist Pathet Lao. These Americans are at Phong Hong, north of Vientiane, which is also headquarters for a Royal Lao regiment. They'll be there for 6 months. Supply to the advisory team in Phong Hong, to all other such teams, and in fact to all outposts held by the Royal Lao Army, is by helicopter or by drop from fixed-wing aircraft. There's no other way because there are, practically speaking, no roads, and where there are roads, they're not safe. The flying is done by a company called Air America, which is a private company under contract to the United States government. Helicopters